Rome didn't build an empire on courage alone. It built it on debt. We love to picture Roman soldiers as noble, disciplined, unstoppable warriors. But behind those shining helmets and sharp swords lay a very different truth. Money. A lot of it. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers needed food, weapons, roads, pay. Horses needed feed. Siege engines needed wood and labor. War wasn't just war. It was the engine of a massive economic system. So how did Rome finance it all? And why does it still sound so familiar today? Because once that system started turning, it couldn't stop. War wasn't just military. It became an economic necessity. To expand was to survive. To stop was to fall. In the beginning, Rome's army was made up of citizens. If you owned land, you could be drafted. You brought your own weapons and went to war. When the fighting was over, you went back to plowing your fields. But as the empire grew, things changed. Wars got longer, farther. 1 year away wasn't enough anymore. Professional paid soldiers were needed, and professional soldiers meant wages, food, equipment, costs. So, the state started paying them. Not much, but enough to buy loyalty. Then conquest itself became a source of income. Every new province meant new taxes, new slaves, new gold. War became a self-feeding system. But here's the dark side. Rome didn't just rely on taxes, it borrowed, heavily. The wealthy class, the equities, loaned money to the state, not out of kindness, but for profit. Interest payments, business privileges, tax collection rights. War had become an investment, and every victory put money in someone's pocket. Over time, the whole system revolved around this. Generals gained power by promising spoils. Senators became partners in violence. Private contractors, the publicani, handled logistics and taxes, getting rich in the process. In modern terms, Rome had built a military-industrial economy. But the bill kept growing. The state needed more and more revenue. When conquest slowed and expenses rose, Rome turned to the oldest trick in the book: debasing the currency. Starting with Nero, the silver content in coins was quietly reduced. Over time, money became little more than an empty promise. The result? Inflation, mistrust, collapse. The rich protected and multiplied their wealth. The poor were left paying taxes and fighting wars with worthless coins. Rome wasn't just falling militarily, it was collapsing financially. Fast forward to today. Debt-driven economies, massive budget deficits, central banks printing money, wars financed by credit lines. Sound familiar? Different era, same system. The Roman denarius has become the modern dollar or euro. But the logic hasn't changed. The rich buy assets, the poor get crushed by inflation. Governments overspend to keep the machine running. War is still a business. Rome teaches us something vital. A system built on constant expansion can't last forever. Eventually, there's nothing left to conquer. Resources dry up. Revenues vanish, but the debt remains. And when that happens, the state turns inward, squeezing its own people. Rome raised taxes, debased its money even further, and handed out bread and circuses to keep the crowd quiet. The wealthy retreated to their villas. Today we call it monetary policy or economic stimulus. But at its core, it's the same thing. Wars are still financed by debt. And in the end, who pays for it? We do. Through inflation, high prices, and shrinking public services. Once an economy depends on debt, you don't need a crisis to print money. You just need to avoid collapse. So emergency measures become normal, and everyone keeps saying everything's fine until it's not. That's why history isn't just the past, it's a warning. Rome didn't fall because it was evil. It fell because the system couldn't stop itself. And today we're on a similar path, only digital, global, and faster. Money and power still move together. War is still profitable, inflation still punishes the weak, and the story of everything's fine is still being told. So what can we do? Start by seeing the truth. Because most people still don't. They think inflation is bad luck, that debt equals freedom, that taxes are just how it is. But they're not. You can't completely escape the system, but you can't play the game blindly either. Real strength doesn't start with money. It starts with awareness. learn history. Watch how the system really works. And keep asking yourself, who wins when I stay confused? Because you were never meant to know. You weren't supposed to ask how Rome funded its wars, or how modern states borrow today. You were supposed to watch the headlines and stay distracted, but now you know. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Financial education isn't just about managing money. It's about understanding power, about seeing through the illusion of stability. So next time you hear about a new war, a